Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from the Caregiving Years Training Academy. Thank you so much for joining me. This is our fourth in a special four-part series where we are having conversations with family caregivers. And we're going to conclude our four-part series with a conversation about self-care. And a family caregiver is going to join me in just a few moments, Beverly, and she's going to share her experiences caring for her daughter. I wanted to give oh, you know what? I'll tell you a little bit about me, just in case you're wondering, who is she? So I started supporting family caregivers in 1990. I launched one of the very first online caregiving communities in 1996. I started developing and delivering CEU-approved workshops in 2008. I have training programs for caregiving coaches, support group leaders, mentors, facilitators, system navigators, and our professional listening artist. And Barbara just enrolled in that yesterday, and I'm really excited about that. Personally, I helped my parents. I helped my dad for just a little over 19 years. I helped my mom for 7. Let's take a deeper dive into self-care during a caregiving experience. There is research that I see regularly, and I've actually tried to encourage people not to share this research, and it's from 1999. And I can't get people to stop sharing this. So I wanted to just start with this conversation. Sometimes people will start a conversation about family caregivers die before their carees, and they often reference this study that was done in 1999, that family caregivers have a 63% higher mortality rate than non-family caregivers. And there has been a lot of research about that research that has challenged it. So that's why I just wanted to share that. We're going to talk about what stresses us out during caregiving, but I just want to make sure that we're sticking to what's relevant and true. And I would say that study, because it's been challenged, wouldn't be a good representation of what the experience is like. And we want to stay truthful, because that's where the solutions are. When we tell the truth about what the caregiving experience is, then we can create realistic, relatable, practical, logical, relevant, impactful resources and solutions. Okay, so here's one of the studies that debunked that 1999 research. So they reanalyzed the data, and that they figured out that it really was due to lower socioeconomic status, not caregiving. Here's another one. They found no increased mortality risk when they followed. If everybody could mute themselves, that'd be great. When they followed 3,500 married couples. There was another one where they looked at 30,000 family caregivers, and they found no significant difference in mortality rates. And then here's another one. So they reviewed and critiqued over a dozen caregiver mortality studies. And they concluded the mortality risk for family caregivers has been overstated. This is really important for us to remember. So if you are tempted to share a stat around mortality and caregiving, please instead share around stress. So we know that the experience is stressful. I don't want to come to the conclusion that there's no impact on our health. There is. And let's just look at what that is. So we could look at market trends and determine it impacts our stress. In 1 year, the cost of hiring home care rose by 14%. In 1 year, 14%. That's stressful. So when we're looking to hire help through a home care agency, what we would have paid 15 months ago would have been 14% less than what we're paying now. That means we hire less help because we have a budget that's stretched more. So instead of being able to, for instance, to use 10 hours of help, our budget might now be 8 hours of help because of that price increase. That is significant. We also have wait lists. We're going to talk to Beverly a little bit about that when she joins us. If you are caring for a family member who has qualified for Medicaid, and there are programs in your state that can help, you might have to wait. And it's not just waiting a couple weeks, it's waiting years. That's stressful. Trying to figure out how do we piece together solutions while we wait for the solution we need to start. In addition, we might be waiting to see a doctor. So the average wait time for new patient, non-emergent appointments is 26 days, almost a month, up from 8%. And if you are scheduling an appointment with a specialist, it could be longer than that. In our first workshop in this series, we talked to Sharon, who cares for her husband. She realized he had a diagnosis of dementia. She called the neurology department at her local university. She called in October. She was given an appointment in May. The day after Thanksgiving, she called and begged them to see her husband sooner because Thanksgiving was such a disaster. So could you imagine, you know something's wrong, but you have to wait 7 months to get the diagnosis? Wow. And we know in the rare disease community, it's not just months of trying to find the diagnosis, it can be years. That's stressful. So I started doing a stress survey at the end of 2015. I was with my dad at his oncology appointment, and it was November of 2014, and Ebola was starting to spread. And they were screening to make sure he was not at risk for that. At this time, he was 82, advancing bladder cancer, had not traveled really out of the Chicagoland area, much less overseas, but they still did this assessment to see what his risk could be for this disease. And when I was standing next to him, I thought, where's the risk assessment for my stress level? Because it didn't happen. There was no risk assessment for my stress level. So I started on this campaign throughout much of 2015 to try to get the CDC to track family caregiver stress. I did Twitter chats, I wrote letters, we had petitions, we got nowhere. So I thought, well, I'll just do it. So I still do this. If you are interested in taking any of our surveys, you can go to our communitycaringourway.com. We have surveys around stress, fatigue, spending habits, financial impact. And I'll tell you a little bit about our fatigues in just a minute. So our stress is 4.10 on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most stressed. It has never been below 4.10, which says to me that our stress is constant. We might have a few hours where we feel like, okay, I'm so tired, I can't feel stressed, but the stress shows up for us every day. In this stress survey, I ask, what's the source of your stress? And the number one answer always is, I miss my life. It's around this lack of time and energy for what we used to do and who we used to spend time with. I miss my life. I do a separate survey around our exhaustion during our caregiving experience. One of the questions that I ask is, how tired are you? This is another scale from 1 to 5, and 5 is energized, 1 is fatigued. 71% of those who have taken the survey select 1 or 2. No one selects 5. No one feels energized during their caregiving experience, which makes sense, but it's always the data that makes it just scream at you. Oh my gosh, we're exhausted. And then I asked, what tires you? And I gave them a list of probably 12 or 13 different options, and they could check as many as they wanted. And 56% check coping. That's the number one answer that's checked. And then it's scarcity, and then it's loneliness, and then it's grief. If you are interested in doing a deeper dive into the caregiving fatigues, we do have a 8-part workshop. You can watch the 8 videos, and I talk specifically about a caregiving fatigue, like feeling tired of coping, feeling tired of making decisions, feeling tired of worrying, of grieving, of feeling guilty. And that also is in our community, caringourway.com. Then I asked, well, what energizes you? And it's solitude. But think how hard it is to have solitude during a caregiving experience. Let's go back to 2 stats I shared earlier. The cost of home care has increased 14%. Let's say 15 months ago, you had 10 hours every week or every month for your break. And now the budget can only afford 8. And maybe of those 10 hours, you had 2 hours where you felt relaxed because you had run errands, you had taken the time to manage chores or responsibilities, and the last 2 hours of these 10 hours were spent just sitting in the backyard, relaxing, enjoying coffee with a friend. But now, because of the budget, you have to give up those 2 hours. So the solitude ends. It also could be that you are on a wait list for a program, and it could be a day program. And if your caree attends a day program, then you have the house to yourself. And if you're on a wait list, you might never have the house to yourself. We crave the house to ourselves during our caregiving experience. I want to mention productivity because I always think this is interesting. Because we're exhausted from our caregiving stress and worries and responsibilities and managing so much, but we are energized when we are productive outside of our caregiving experience. And that's important to remember because sometimes self-care during caregiving is doing things that might look like more work, but it's not necessarily more work. It's that feeling of being productive. And during a caregiving experience, we can feel like we can't actually make something better. We're fighting a disease process, so the declines continue. We're fighting systems to get help and support. We don't feel like we're making a dent. But if there's something we can do where we can achieve and accomplish that makes us feel good, we are productive. Sometimes I see headlines where they will say, family caregivers neglect their health. And that drives me nuts. We are not neglecting our health. I think neglect is the word that makes it sound like we are intentionally saying, forget it. I am not going to do anything for myself. We are trying to figure it out. It's just that the challenges feel so great and so big that it takes us a while to figure it out. We have another masterclass that's called The House of Cards, because when you're in a caregiving situation, you are managing this fragile house of cards. And you're trying to figure out, if you add in help, how do you keep the house of cards still standing? So even a good change can feel like a threat to the house of cards. It's what we're always worried about. How do I do something that could be good without making it worse or harder for myself? And we know when you bring in help, you are managing help. That's another responsibility. Okay, so let's bring in Beverly. Beverly, if you want to unmute yourself. So joining us is Beverly, who cares for her daughter. And I asked her to join us because she has some really interesting insights on self-care. So Beverly, give us a quick introduction. Tell us about your role as a family caregiver, and then tell us a little bit about what you do professionally.
Okay, my name is Beverly Nance, and I am an entrepreneur, author, a new podcaster, and I am the mother of a daughter who is 31 years old. She is autistic. She's on the lower end of the autistic scale. She doesn't have any language. I also have a son who is 33. So hi, everybody.
I just want to mention something about your story, Beverly, that I always think about. You worked in the post office
Yes.
and you intentionally worked the overnight shift.
Yes.
And tell us why that was an intentional decision.
I had so much to do during the day. You know, you'll find a lot of people complain about postal work, but it actually saved my career working nights. And I didn't have to worry about getting fired for one thing for not being in attendance. And yeah, I always worked overnight, and it's it's kind of a double-edged sword, but I appreciate it looking back.
Yeah, and you did that because of your responsibilities in caring for your daughter.
Yes. Thank goodness they had
Yeah,
at night.
yeah. So what did that allow you to do during the day?
Oh, well, my daughter got diagnosed. She was almost 4 years old when she got diagnosed. So it did allow me to do everything, to advocate for her when I didn't even know what autism was, all the way up until the time that I retired. I was still working. I think I worked maybe day shift, maybe 1 year, and that was a disaster. Yeah.
It was a disaster. Okay. So this is where I think people forget or not necessarily think through the complexity of self-care. So you could tell your story. I picked the overnight shift so I could be available for my daughter, and people might think, "Oh my gosh, why did you do that to yourself?" But that really was giving yourself peace of mind.
It wasn't like the main thing because I really wanted to be at the school. They were constantly, they called up until the time she graduated and she stayed until school. She was 22 years old. I was able to attend, it wasn't actually court, it was like mediation to get her services. I was able to be there and partially awake. Yeah, night shift actually really worked for me. And like I said, looking back on it, I really appreciate it now.
Yes, right. And so when I think about peace of mind, it means that you could be present to advocate for her. You could be on top of whatever it was that you were working through to ensure that she had the services that were right for her, that met her needs. You were available within the school system to ensure that the school was accommodating her. You made sure that she received everything she needed.
Oh, yeah. Um, she got ABA in the home, so they were constantly sending therapists to the house. One would stay 4 hours, another one would come 2 hours. They were there up until dinner time, and so I was able to be present for that. One eye open, but I was still able to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to. I would have been at work.
Right. I'm curious, how do you define self-care for yourself?
It's really shift for me now. Self-care for me now is because I have such a, how can I say this? The times are like between 2, 3, 4 in the morning, or when I'm up and I'm worried. So my self-care now is trying to get things situated in her life so that I can sleep at night. Because when you're up worrying about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if when I die, and all those things keep you up at night. And so I'm busy trying to get things situated for her. So when I die, I don't have to worry about that because those things will keep you up at night. So those, it's not, the nail polish is all good and I haven't had a massage in years, and it's not that I'm neglecting myself. And yeah, I would love to go out and have drinks with the girls, but I'm busy getting things set for her. That's my self-care.
Every worry needs a plan. That's what I remind myself on a regular basis. If I am up worrying about something, it means I need to put a plan in place. And oftentimes that plan then spurs an action. Every worry needs a plan. For those of you who are joining us live, I'd love for you to share your definition of what self-care is like for you as well. And there's another piece of this as well. There are worries that keep you up at night. So then you have figured out, I'm worried about what will happen when I die. So you put together plans. You've created a binder with all the information for your daughter. You've alerted your son. You've showed your son the binder. He knows where to find the binder. He knows how to use the binder. So that's one way you're taking care of a worry. If you were, for instance, to go out with friends for a drink, there still is a worry about what's happening at home.
Well, oh wow, I haven't been out for a drink in so many years. But I used to have good respite in place. They stopped that respite program, but I always tell people if you can get respite, take advantage of respite and go ahead and go out and enjoy yourself. And of course, you're going to always worry about what's going on at home. My son doesn't even live with me. I'm worried about what's going on at his house.
That's true. That, yes, absolutely.
You're always going to worry about your kids. But with my daughter not having language, I think the last time that I actually went out and didn't have to worry about what was going on at home is when she was with him. Because, he take care of her.
We had a meeting just about a year ago, and I noticed that you looked more rested. And so I asked you what was happening, and you started to feel a little better around COVID because you were very, very concerned about your daughter getting COVID and then being hospitalized and you not being there to speak on her behalf. I'm curious how you work through those kinds of worries too. So the worry that she will get sick, then there's a hospitalization and that changes things.
Unfortunately, we stayed inside most of COVID. We just took our mask off maybe about 2 months ago. I know it's overkill, but we wore our masks everywhere when I did go out. I know my son, when he was living at home, I would go out, and before he would go to work, I would go to the grocery store so I didn't have to take her. And we stayed inside. I was so worried about her. Because in the beginning of COVID, they wouldn't let you into the hospitals. And that you're hearing that on the news. And I said, oh my goodness, if she gets COVID, she's not going to be able to speak for herself. And so I was in a panic. And of course, my other family members really thought I was crazy and nuts, but this is not the life that they're living. So yeah, I took COVID very seriously.
And your mask was a form of self-care for yourself.
It's in the car right now. It's in the car right now. Every time I go in the store, if I hear someone coughing or anything, and I have to catch myself. Okay, calm down. They probably don't have COVID. I was just so afraid of her catching COVID.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I think is so interesting about what you're sharing is this idea that your self-care strategies are around managing your worries.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that. I probably have too many worries, and I probably well, I think a lot of people would think that I have too many worries. I know my kids probably do.
And it's but it's present for you. And the
Yes,
worries are what keep you up at night. And what you're trying to do is give yourself a good night's sleep.
yes,
Yeah. And so you know what helps yourself sleep at night, and that is managing your worries.
yes.
Let's talk about wait lists.
Oh,
You're you're in Georgia. You were on a wait list for a program for your daughter. How long were you on the wait list?
I was on the wait list for 7 years, and then she didn't get her services until it was 7.5 years, because the other 6 months was paperwork and assessments. But it took that long, 7.5 years. She wasn't the longest one. There are kids who have been on there for, I always call them kids, but they're adults. They've been on there longer than her, some shorter, but some longer. The list, from what I understand, is it's been a couple years ago. They said it's 10,000 people long. I'm not real sure. They won't give you the exact number.
Yeah. I'm just curious, so when you were put on the list, how did they describe how long the wait list would be or the wait time until your daughter started her program?
They didn't. You just hear it secondhand through other parents. They'll tell you there's a short list and there's a longer list. The short list is supposed to be the people with more needs, and then you go from the short list, I'm sorry, from the long list over to the short list. And it's just rumors from parents. They never tell you exactly, well, this is your date or anything like that. You're just on the list.
You're on the list. And tell us about the program that you're using now that you were on the wait list for.
Well, for my daughter, it's a now comp waiver. And then during that 6-month period, they assess you for what you need. You don't get all the services that are on the waiver. You get what they give you. And if you don't know anything about what you can get, then you don't know. Like now I'm learning more things that I could have got, but that's okay. She's in a day program and it pays for that. And without her being in the now comp waiver, I think the cost of the day program was like it was $3,000 some dollars per month. Not a lot of people can afford that. I couldn't. So you can pay out of pocket. I don't know anybody that does, because I don't know anybody that can afford that. She goes there 5 days a week. You don't have to. Some kids go there. I'm calling them kids, they're all adults. Some kids go there a couple days a week. Some of them are able to actually go and work, and then they have their day program. But my daughter, she's low functioning autistic, so she goes there 5 days a week. That's one of her programs. She has community living skills, where someone comes into the home or supposed to come into the home and help her like do things that she would do where I did, or she lived on her own. She could wash clothes, get her food ready, learn how to dress herself properly. And she does these things with me anyway, but properly bathe herself, put on deodorant, brush her teeth, that's those things. And she has respite. The respite program it's for her, but it's actually for me also. And then she has a diaper. She wears diapers, but not for the reasons that you would think. She wears diapers for sensory reasons. And she never got one diaper anyway, so it doesn't matter. But those are her 4 things. They
So
have other I've qualified for.
just as an aside, so she's enrolled in a program where you're supposed to receive adult disposable briefs for her to wear. And how many of those have you received to date?
She's been her waiver is like a year old now. It was a year old last month. Yeah, and they haven't received any, because the people who service the waiver, it's really a confused thing. You get the waiver and then they hire other companies to manage your waiver for you, if that's the program that you choose. And they said they couldn't find any diaper vendors for 1 whole year. But if I do it, which that's what I'm transitioning into now, I can order them from Walmart or Amazon. You're probably wondering, why could they not have done the same thing? That's the same thing I'm wondering. But in order to keep my stress level down, I'm just going to go ahead and order them and not worry about what they're doing.
Okay. I want to ask you about the process of being on the wait list. So you apply for a program, they say, yes, you've been approved for this program. We're adding you to the wait list. I'm wondering, how helpful would it have been for you to know how long that wait list was?
In the beginning, I just knew she was going to be on a wait list. I don't know how helpful it would have been, because everything happened at once. I was retiring and she was graduating from school. So with her being in school all that time, she stayed in the school till she was 22. I was really looking forward to spending time with her. And I thought she was looking forward to spending time with me too, but she really wasn't. I mean, she does like spending time with me, but she would rather be with her peer group. I found that out later. And so I had all these things planned for us. We've been on cruises and we were traveling and everything. And I was like, you know what? She's having more fun with them and not me. So maybe I overestimated. So I started not really, I was never really worried about the wait list, but when I think it was the beginning of 2019, no, it was the beginning of 2020 when COVID started, I really started wondering, where is she on this list? Because by the time 2021 rolled around, we were both like, trying to, we were just going at it. So she was tired and I was tired. But yeah, I wasn't really worried, because if you sit around and think about, I'm on this list, I've been on this list 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, you'll drive yourself crazy. You'll
Yes.
You'll go nuts. And then you'll become so angry and jaded. It's like, oh my God, this is terrible. You'll hear about other people getting on the list. Like, how did they get on the list? And I didn't make it. This, I just try not to think about it.
So now that your daughter is attending a day program 5 days a week, what does it do for you in terms of time for yourself?
It's everything. And I would never say that in front of her, but it is everything. When and it's only, I have to drive her there. That's a whole nother story. But I end up with, at the end of the day, about 5 hours to myself every day, and it is everything. You would think 5 hours is nothing, but I so appreciate it. You would think that it was 24 whole hours. It is like you were saying about being in the house alone. It's just wonderful. I have all these projects. I have too many projects going on for myself, for fixing up stuff that, I'm redoing her room and I'm painting, keeping myself busy and productive, just like you were saying. And it feels good. It really feels good.
It's your time.
I think so.
Yeah.
But she's 31. I've been doing this for so many years. It just feels so good.
And I think it's just interesting to have this position that you would have had this time had the program been available. It's not like you said, okay, forget it. I don't need this. I don't want this. You needed it. You wanted it. And it was the system just not able to accommodate you in a timely way. And so you were waiting. You were waiting.
She graduated from school at 22, and then there's that gap where you're losing the skills that you learned in school while you're waiting on a day program. So a lot of the stuff she had to start over. The things that they were teaching her, the social skills at school, because there's no social in there. You're just on a waiting list. There's no, group programs for kids to go to, or there's nothing. Once you graduate from high school, they're done with you, and you're just you're on your parents now.
I want to mention something else about the day program. You actually are an almost like an unpaid staff member at the program now too, because of the turnover. So if they need help, they will call you and you will go to the day program to help out.
I thought I didn't mind, but I really want the program to be successful. But the turnover rate is just it's crazy. I personally think that the people there should be paid way more than they do, and they don't. They're located right where there are a lot of other jobs that they could be taking. So yeah, I will go there, and if they need me to volunteer, I don't mind volunteering. But I sort of do, but I want to.
I mean, you could go forward in your head and think, if I'm not helping and if they don't have enough staff, what happens to the program?
Exactly. But I know that I'm dropping my daughter off. There are other people that are dropping their kids off. They're going to work. And I know, wow, what would it feel like if you were unable to go to work today because you didn't have anyone to care for your kid? And, I can see them. They're rushing, trying to get their little Johnny in the door. And, I'm taking my time and letting them go. You go ahead and go in front of me. Because I know that will feel terrible. You're still trying to work because you need to eat. You have bills to pay, but you need this program to work. And if they took that program away, it would be terrible.
How many hours a month would you estimate that you volunteer to help out?
I just started it. It's just sporadic, but that's actually my time.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the program, the place that runs the program is called In Community. I was their civic leader for a whole year back in 2018, 2019. So, they do good work. I only went into the day program like 4 times, but they have the residential homes for the kids. They run a lot of programs in Atlanta. So I know that their heart is in the right place. So I don't mind helping out when, they need me.
And how do you decide when they call if you want to help?
No, it's like when I drop my daughter off, I'm not gonna go back home and then come back. It's when I drop my daughter off. Oh, so what are you doing? I'm in front of my daughter, so I have to say, I'm not doing anything. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna go home and down a bottle of wine. But anyway, if they need me when I'm dropping her off, well, it doesn't look like I got too many people here today, then I don't mind, but I do mind.
Yeah, 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 that's a tough one. That's a tough one.
Schedule. No, because if I do that, then they're never gonna hire people. I
If
don't want you on schedule and have them like, oh yeah, well, we got you down for Monday, Tuesday. No, you don't. No,
so you're okay dropping off, and if you notice, and if they ask, you'll stay.
I don't have a problem with that.
Let's talk about the respite program. Tell us a little bit about the respite program that you use for your daughter.
That program ended. It was a lovely program. I really enjoyed it. They had it where you can drop your kid off, and again, it's adults. If they do girls, boys, girls, boys. So that there's not co-ed situation. So you would drop your daughter off. Well, I would drop my daughter off like on a Friday at 3, and then I would pick her up Sunday at 3. They try to fix it so you have time to go to church on Sunday, and then you can pick your loved one up. That was the weekend program. And then they also, for the older, once they got older, you can go from Monday to Friday. You can bring your child on Monday and then pick them up on Friday. And during the week, they would take, like, if it's girls, they would take them to get their nails done or pedicures. They've been to the water park. They would do something different every day. And then you have a whole week to yourself, or you have a weekend to yourself to do whatever. And then the program, they had it at this, it's called Haven House, but the Haven House is still there. I'm not sure what they're using it for. And they never did say exactly why they stopped doing respite there, but it's gone now. But that to me is true respite, because I've seen programs where, okay, you want to bring your kid at 12 and then you pick them up at 3. No, that's to me, that's more stress than they might as well just stay home.
So that program ended.
Yes, they still have respite. They do Saturday respite, but it's on the other side of town. And if you know anything about the freeways out here, it's by the time I drive all the way out there, there's no point in driving all the way back home. Then driving back to pick her up. Never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've been talking with us about the challenges of accessing programs so that you have time for yourself. And accessing programs can depend on your own financial situation, funding for a program, how close it is to where you are, and how the program is set up in terms of how many hours would be available. Because you want it to be something that has enough hours that you feel like it's worth it. I want to make that happen.
Yes.
What else is missing in your community that could be helpful for you and for your daughter so that you had time for yourself?
Um, I would have to say that it would be a good respite program. Um, and a place where I guess you could look it up online, but a place where you can connect with other parents. It's like a few weeks ago, I was connecting with other parents that were kids were newly diagnosed. Because a lot of times people, I don't know what this all is me, where you can go and find out about what resources are available. A lot of times people are they were just like I was when my daughter got diagnosed. Okay, autism, what is that? A lot of people don't understand what it is. And when they find out, oh, this is a lifelong condition, where on the spectrum is my kid? I think those kind of resources would be nice. I'm not sure if it was something for at my daughter's age. I'm not gonna say I got it all figured out, but I do have a lot of it figured out. And I have a lot of people that I can connect to and ask. for whatever it is that I need. Like when I was filling out my Medicaid paperwork, I had a couple of women who they had already done it, so they were pros at it, and that helped me.
You're really using an informal network to connect to support and services.
Yeah, it would be informal. It's a group that I belong to. It's in the county that I belong to, and they don't know everything, but they know a whole lot.
If you could, for instance, have a week to yourself, what would you do during those 7 days?
Um, Now I probably would just get on a plane and go to Las Vegas. If my son was watching my daughter, I hate to ask him because, he watched her last year when I went to Texas. So yeah, I hate to ask him because I know how it feels to when you get days off, you want to enjoy your days off. So it's been a year since I've had any vacation.
And
But
how did it go while you were in Texas and your son was taking care of your daughter?
well, when I don't have to constantly call and worry or anything when he's taking care of her. He's also her co-legal guardian, so I don't have to worry about that.
So it was a true break.
It was a break. People don't understand, when I check into a hotel, I'm enjoying all the amenities of the hotel. I was there on business, but I skip some of the conferences and look, I just want to sleep. I want to sleep and get some good rest. And when she's with him, I know it's okay.
It's interesting. I used to host the National Caregiving Conference. We did it for 4 years, and we had attendees who literally just came to sleep. They would come to the workshops in the afternoon, but they would take their time getting up in the morning because you can take your time to get up in the morning. And that's huge.
Yes.
In our stress survey, we ask individuals who have completed it to also leave comments about what their life is like. And one of the themes that is always coming up is every day is the same, except it's different. Every day is caregiving, except how caregiving shows up, it's different every day. So there could be a new challenge or a challenge that is a carryover from the previous day. It's this idea that every day you get up and it's not a holiday, even when it's Saturday, that it's another day of caregiving. And I don't mean to make it seem like, all dark clouds, right? It's just that the reality is very different. How you look at a Saturday is different than how others look at a Saturday. How else would you describe the difference in your life versus others who you know that might not be in a caregiving situation?
Well, I wish I had an answer. I've been doing this for so long. I I don't know. I really don't know.
It's just the life you know.
Yep. Yes.
And I'm curious how your definition of self-care has evolved over the years.
Well, I think when I was working, I really wanted to just have some time. I know one time my son watched my daughter and I flew to Miami and just myself. I just walked along the boardwalk at South Beach and it just felt so good. But as I'm getting older, I just feel like, well, okay, I need to get all these things in a row. So that's my self-care. But yeah, I think I took a little more time for myself. And I was telling my sister the other day, I haven't even bought myself a new shirt in so long. I would like to just go and shop and pick out something for me instead of picking it up and looking at it and saying, oh, you know what? Tyler would look cute in that, do something for myself, like buy something for myself.
What would be the perspective shift that would make it okay to actually look at a shirt or a blouse and say, I'm going to buy that for myself?
There's just so much guilt. Just like I was saying, I wouldn't say certain things in front of her because I know she does, because she doesn't talk doesn't mean she doesn't understand some of the things I'm saying, but there's a lot of guilt associated with some of the way that I feel. So that's probably why when I go in a store, I would pick out something for her to wear to her day program rather than getting something for myself. I don't know how I would switch that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about the guilt. And you described it as the guilt about what you think or feel inside.
Because a lot of times I really just don't want to be a caregiver. And I just, I, it's just so overwhelming. You get so tired of it. And, even my son was telling me, well, why don't you take a cruise? But what they don't understand is that if I have to take my daughter with me, I'm just taking the caregiving on the road. There's no breaking that for me. I mean, we had a good time last time we went on a cruise. My daughter, she's over 21. She's grabbing the drinks with the little umbrellas in it. This is supposed to be for, okay, I give up. It's supposed to be for me, but okay, it's for you. And so I ended up being on high alert the whole time, making sure she does not on the balcony, don't go too far, don't lean too far. We're afraid of being in a foreign country and something might happen to me. She can't speak for herself. So sometimes you just feel like, I'd rather just stay home. And then you feel guilty about that. Yeah. There's a lot of guilt associated with um caregiving. There's a lot of guilt.
So how do you, if you can, move past the guilt?
I I think I really wish I knew how to, because it is something that always comes back up, because a lot of times I'm thinking, I want to do this, I can't do that. There's resentment there.
Hmm.
Really, really guilty. I shouldn't feel that way. That's my daughter. I love her. But boy, would I love a break.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know how do you, I don't know. I think I've been living with it for so long that it's just, I stopped. What I did do is stop expressing it to people. So I said, I wonder how that sounds when I'm telling people this. I better shut up.
Oh, I think it sounds incredibly courageously honest. And I think all of us in a caregiving experience have had that and have those thoughts. The only thing that helped me was a conversation with my niece, and I was thinking about doing something with my parents that I did not like to do. My dad would throw up during meals, and he was in denial about this, and he'd always want to go out to eat, and I just couldn't take it because I would think, I cannot bear this. What it's like for me, what it's like for other diners, what it's like for the staff. And I was talking to my niece about saying no to my parents who wanted to go out to a nice meal. And my niece said, your quality of life matters too. And that changed how I thought about things. I started adding into the question of how does this impact my quality of life? How do I protect my quality of life? How do I make sure my quality of life is part of my day? I don't know if that helps at all. It just helped me because I felt like I got lost in trying to keep my parents happy, trying to keep my parents engaged in the community, trying to be this good daughter, trying to be this good family caregiver. And what happened is my quality of life just got lost in it. So how do you feel about your own quality of life as you think through all this?
I definitely think it better. I know that like my son, he just got engaged, and she's very social. They always want to have parties and get-togethers and whatnot. Of course, she wants to include myself and my dog. Of course, she hasn't been around long enough to really realize sometimes inviting my daughter could turn into a disaster. And so a lot of times I will say no, would I really want to go? But I know how my daughter's going to act when she gets there. And then I feel like everybody's going to turn around and look at me and think, oh my gosh, what kind of mother, how did she raise her? Especially if they don't know about autism. So, yeah, do I have even I think I've kind of made my quality of life within these four walls of this house. I've kind of made things in my four walls. I don't want to say wonderful for me, but good for me at home because I'm so used to having to say no and stay home. Yeah, of course, yeah, I would like to go out but I've got my cute wine glasses downstairs and I've made myself a gym. I've got my own little respite spot. I've got the office. And this is just kind of like my own little castle.
Yeah. One of the words that I think about regularly as well is flourishing. Where do we go to flourish? And you've created spaces for flourishing.
Mhm.
You've created a space for flourishing with your business. You've created a space for flourishing with your health because you have your own workout space. And you've created a space of flourishing around feeling multidimensional. I think the other piece of it is during a caregiving experience, you feel like it's one dimension. There's only one part of you, and you are thinking through how do I let all parts of my being feel taken care of?
Well, I can't go a lot of places with her. And it's not that she's not old enough. She has a lot of behavior problems. So yeah, I've got locks on all. You'd be surprised how many locks and keys I have on the doors to keep her out of some of my spaces for her safety and for my stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We are out of time.
Already.
Yes. It's a fascinating conversation, Beverly, because it really speaks to how we are doing everything within our power to take care of ourselves during caregiving. And there are so many pieces of it outside of our control. And it's not neglecting our health, it's doing what we can given the limitations, the barriers, and the challenges. Beverly, before we leave today, can you put your website address in our chat room? So if anybody would like to connect with you, they can connect with you. And if you are here live, stay so that I can share the evaluation. If you are watching the recording, thank you so much for watching. And you'll go to the next lesson to get your evaluation. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much, Beverly.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And I'm Denise Brown. Be sure to join our community, caringourway.com, for our archives, our events, and our support. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.